underwriter's investigation for insurance companies
Oh, wow.
on the side. Now I could tell you some stories
I bet you could.
on that one too.
Got about 30 seconds here.
Yeah.
Come on in. Welcome. We're glad you're here.
Don't know what he wants yet.
That's all right. Sure. Start in about 10 seconds.
You have a flag, don't I?
Yes. And good evening. I'd like to call the Planning Board meeting to order. And let's start with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. All right. I'm sure everyone has seen the agenda. If there are any adjustments or additions, if none, I would gladly entertain a motion to approve the agenda.
Make a motion to approve the agenda.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, thank you. That's approved. And the minutes from the last meeting were in the package that we got. If there are any additions or adjustments, if not, the chair would entertain a motion to approve the minutes from the last meeting.
I'll make a motion.
Thank you, Mr. Ross, and a second. Thank you, Mr. Kimsey. All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Again, unanimous. Now we're at public comment. If anyone would like to comment on anything, have we received anything through email? All right. We certainly appreciate input from our residents. Please be heard. We'd love to hear your thoughts. New business. We have the initial assignment of Mills River mixed use zoning for an annexation petition, Annex 23-01 and Annex 23-02, Lots Properties, LLC, Craig and Annette Lots, 227 Ray Hill Road, R23-02. Mr. Malachek?
Thank you. So, good evening, planning board members. So a little different from a normal rezoning. So the town received a request for voluntary contiguous annexation last month for these two parcels. One has an assigned address at 227 Ray Hill Road. That parcel is about 1.75 acres inside, and then the parcel that's contiguous with the town limits adjacent to that parcel but no address is about 5.71 acres in size. So again, there's no rezoning application here because again, Mr. Lots and Lots Properties are requesting through the annexation petition to have mixed-use zoning assigned. State law allows us to consider preliminary development approvals while the annexation process is still going on. So we figured we might as well start this step, and then council will be considering whether to move forward with the petitions at their meeting this Thursday. If the board makes a recommendation tonight, council will then set a public hearing on Thursday for the official assignment of zoning, and that would take place after the annexation is approved, if that's council's wish. Currently, both the properties are in the R2 residential 2 county zoning district. So again, the request is to go from R2 county zoning to Mills River mixed use. The description of the mixed use district is to establish all uses, but regulating certain uses to ensure neighborhood impacts are mitigated. Again, I always describe it, it's almost like open zoning because almost any commercial or residential use is allowed by right in mixed use with some development standards. So again, just like a normal rezoning, because it's a couple of parcels in a smaller area, we just want to protect against a spot zoning challenge. And again, we want to, the board should consider all possible uses in the mixed use zoning district, possibly establishing on these properties. We don't want to get into a contract zoning challenge where we're considering a specific development plan or use as part of this zoning request. I'll go through some of the images in your packet and attachments, but all the parcels around this area of town and the subject properties are all zoned mixed use. Similarly, on the future land use map, they're all designated the rural residential category, and the majority of rural residential designated properties in the town are all zoned mixed use as well. With the spot zoning considerations, again, I think it's less likely in this case because we would be assigning mixed use zoning, which is the same as everything around it. Spot zoning, usually you want to protect against zoning a property differently from the surrounding area, but I still think it's important, and looking at state law, it basically said we should still go through the same process and considering factors of reasonableness. So in the board's deliberation tonight, if you'll consider and reflect in the public record the size and physical attributes of the properties, the compatibility with the existing comprehensive plan, benefits and detriments to the landowner, neighbors, and the community, relationship between the proposed uses and the current uses of adjacent properties, why the rezoning is in the public interest, and any changed conditions warranting the rezoning. Staff's recommending approval for Mills River mixed use, again, because everything around it is zoned that way, and it's consistent with the future land use map. And so again, the planning board's role here is advisory, so the planning board can do recommendation for approval, table for 1 month, or recommendation for denial. I'll go through a couple of the items in your packet, and give me 1 second while I get used to this new software here. So this might appear small on your screen, but attachment C, you have the actual survey map or the plat map of the properties. Again, that's required for any annexation request, because once we report to the state, again, if they are annexed, we need to have a legal description of the properties. Attachment D, we have the aerial property, and I highlighted the Mills River jurisdiction on that map as well. Like a normal rezoning, we have the mixed use district description and uses as attachment E, the current zoning map as attachment F, the proposed zoning map as attachment G, the future land use map as attachment H, and then the planning board's draft statement of consistency as attachment I. And I can scroll through, here we go, that's better. So here again, we have the plat map with the two properties highlighted. Here is the aerial map showing the two properties, and again, that one of them is contiguous with town limits at the current moment. So the idea is that this is the first petition we would consider for annexation, and then again, if council moves forward with annexing this parcel, then the next one's contiguous as well. I'll skip through the mixed use zoning district standards. So this is a little different from our normal map because I needed the county zoning overlay, but in the dark brown we have the Mills River mixed use zoning. In the orangish color we have the R2R county zoning, that's residential to rural. And then in the yellow, we have the residential to county zoning, which is what the properties are currently zoned. So that's current. This would be the proposed map, just extending mixed use zoning to those two parcels. And again, just identifying on our future land use map where these properties are clearly adjacent to rural residential areas. And that's all I have at this time. Happy to entertain questions. I believe Mr. Lotz is here in the audience as well, if you have any questions for him.
All right. Thank you very much for that. Does anyone in the board have any questions?
Yeah.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Foster.
I'm trying to wrap my mind around this. This is not in Mills River now, of course. Part of it is, right? Or one of the parcels is
No, so
none of it's in Mills River.
neither parcel is in Mills River
No, and
currently.
so all the showing on this map here, all that around, even if you rezone this or annex it, still all this territory around it's not going to be in Mills River.
Correct. Which map?
Technically, there's a few feet.
That's the
Out of the
Oh.
right of way.
It's right away in the road,
Yeah, there's an overlap of 20 feet.
It would be contiguous.
In the
Technically,
road
not
right
of
not
way.
360 degree.
What map are you referencing, Mr. Foster?
Well, R23 is a proposed zoning map.
Proposed.
I was
Okay,
just looking at this.
let me just pull that up
Attachment
here.
G.
Yeah, attachment G.
Here we go.
That shows it.
So still,
20 feet.
So
but
if
there is
you really,
there is a small corner, like he said,
yeah,
showing that it would be attached to Mills
correct. So
River.
if you really zoom in, there is a 20-foot property overlap at that
Yeah,
northwestern corner. So it's contiguous and it's a voluntary annexation.
it
because-
would be if this is approved. It would be an overlap if this is approved.
Correct. Well, the parcels overlap
Yeah,
currently.
okay.
But you're right, they're not in town limits at this time. The only thing, the better one to look at, excuse my scrolling, is this one. So town limits are in light blue or purple. Everything else is county.
Yeah. So we're actually talking about two different recommendations here, right?
So town council is the only body with the authority to consider the annexation, not the planning board.
Okay, so,
The planning board has to be involved in the assignment of the zoning,
yeah.
just like any rezoning.
So all we have to.
So we're starting that process before council has even considered this, just to get the ball rolling.
Yeah, okay,
Council has annexation on their agenda for Thursday.
Correct. So
Yeah.
Thursday,
This conversation is strictly the zoning.
strictly zoning, yeah,
Correct.
okay.
so this Thursday, council will make a decision whether to go forward with this or whether not to.
But we do know this board that a request for annexation is out there. Yeah, okay.
Yes.
And would we be voting on each or discussing each parcel separately?
No, because rezonings, we can consider multiple parcels at the same time.
Okay.
The second one cannot have on them,
For the annexation.
the annexation, so which the zoning will be irrelevant if it's not
Yeah,
annexed.
so to get into the nitty gritty details, the annexation for the parcel I have my cursor on here, the larger parcel will be considered by council first. If that's approved, the next parcel is then contiguous with our limits. That will then be considered for annexation by council. If that goes through, council will then hold the zoning hearing for both of them.
That makes sense. And in this case, Ray Hill Road is not an actual fee simple right-of-way road. It is a road where the state has an easement, a transportation easement. So the property lines go to the center of the road. Therefore, that's how they touch. Does that make sense? Is that
I've not looked at it in that level, but state law says if it's separated by a road right of way, it still counts.
Still
as
counts,
contiguous.
okay.
Body
well, in
of
this
law.
case, lots of the secondary roads are not purchased property by the state. It's an easement. So the property lines go to the center of the road. You can't use it, but
And actually, you're exactly right, because if you look here at the plat map, the property line does go into the roadway, so you're correct.
So this property now is, for all practical purposes, residential. That's what it's on now.
Correct.
Well,
Yeah.
yeah, it is.
Yeah.
Period. They don't have the mixed use flexibility that we have
Yeah.
in the county.
And most of the homes, I haven't been out there lately, but if I remember, I've traveled there. Most of
all
it,
residential.
it's all residential around it, right? Yeah, okay.
And some farmland, granted, Drew still has some hay down there. agriculture. But it's designated for rural residential in the future use map.
Correct. In the Mills River, yeah, future land use, it's rural residential.
Ask a question, just because I think maybe there was some thoughts that we were gonna have a say in the annexation. The zoning, what would be an alternative to mixed use for this board to talk about? What case could there be made for anything other than mixed use?
Correct. Because if
Not
it
to-
were,
Not to take anything away from conversation, but
Right.
I'm trying to figure out where our conversation is supposed to be, because I don't hear conversation for us.
if it's anything other than mixed use, then it might lend itself to spot zoning.
That's gonna run it. I mean, it couldn't.
Mixed,
the way it is.
yeah.
Or it wouldn't be considered consistent.
Mm-hmm.
So is there another bucket of conversation? I'm sorry, I didn't have my microphone on. My wife is somewhere yelling at you guys over there, Patty. You're supposed to be waving at me. You know, not to try to minimize our influence on this, but I'm not sure that we have a lot of say in it. I can't, if there were three different zoning that all came together near there, then I think we really would need to talk about that. But I don't know that I see a lot of other conversation. I would have a lot of conversations if we could have the annex conversation, but
Yeah,
since we can't.
I'm real familiar with property, so
Right.
there has to be a reason that there's a request to move from residential to mixed use. It's not available in the county, I guess.
I don't know that I would look at it that way.
Well, I would, because I live around the corner from there, so
Sure.
that's what I want to know, is there not the flexibility for the county to rezone?
Can I just throw something at you to why I'm disagreeing with you? And I don't know if we can talk to our applicant or not, but the density in R2 is 1 per acre. And we're what, 0.65?
0.69, 30,000
0.69.
square feet.
So can I speak to our applicant?
Yes.
Sure, of course.
But again, just with the understanding that
Sure.
with the zoning, we have to consider all uses, not just with
Right,
that.
Not
right.
just,
So with no influence here whatsoever, just for clarification, it's my guess that, if you don't know this, the home is on the market for sale right now, if you guys don't know that. And it is advertised at, the 1.7 minus approximately a 0.65, 0.69, somewhere in that. So it's advertised at 1.1.
It's actually at,
If you would just get
acres.
microphone here so you're on the record.
Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Lutz, you don't have to. I just kind of wanted to,
did you want me to?
it's up to you.
It's totally up to you. Yes, sir, Mr. Lice, it's totally up to you. Whatever.
Okay, sorry about that. It's a density is the difference here.
The home is actually, we reduced it, it's at 879, but we're actually getting ready to take it off the market. We're not gonna sell it.
Okay. Yeah, and that's not relevant here. I just was,
Yeah, the cost, we don't, I don't,
But, yeah, we did have it on the market, but we're not gonna sell it. But I can answer any other questions.
Yeah, well, my question was why, there's a reason that you want to be annexed for zoning purposes into Mills River, which is what we're talking about.
Yeah. I mean, on the simplest level, with the current zoning, I can, it's 1 per acre. If I go into Mills River, then I basically can do one more. So right now, I'm gonna keep, my wife and I and our kids, we're gonna keep kind of the center. If you could see the property, there's a road through it. We're gonna keep the center and then basically build 1 per 0.75, something like that. Nice homes, probably 2,500, 3,000 square feet.
but that's, we're really not, I mean, if I'm hearing you right, rezoning gives you more flexibility.
it's density. It's really.
It gives you that
density.
flexibility. You don't have to use that, but you can because it's there. It makes it,
Not that we can hold anybody to that.
of course not, but it gives you more flexibility. And for the town, there are a couple of objectives here that are listed in our statement of consistency, where it would allow for housing within a mix of other uses and expanded tax base and long-range fiscal responsibility. So that would be in the statement of consistency. So there are reasons and to do that. So
I want to say, I have one more thing. I understand where Mr. Lotz is coming from. It's all about the density and how many homes he can build there. And I'm all in favor of that. What I do have a problem with, if we rezone it, the other things that could be built there.
Are you asking me what could be built there?
Well, I know,
There's a list.
there's a
Yeah,
whole list of them,
Mixed use, so
some of which,
almost anything, just like every other
yeah, I
property around it.
understand that.
All of
And
Yes, sir. If unless you're
Thanks.
welcome to stay.
Um,
Thank you for that.
appreciate it.
I did notice on the plat, where it shows there are these two parcels, then there's a third parcel noted as lot 1. That's a separate parcel. There wouldn't be any issues with the access road being in the town and then this other parcel not being in the town. There are no issues with that.
No,
This is a
'cause
private road.
as long as the right of way is in the plat or there's deeded access, there's no conflict there.
Okay.
Yeah,
If you got, yes, sir, if you'd like to comment on that.
we can hear you, it's just the folks listening.
We,
at home.
we built that home and sold it. So yeah, that was all in
The original
It
subdivision.
was in
Parcel.
it was
this
in the
deed.
agreement that we had
This-
the right of
okay.
way. And so
Well, if they'd like to be a Mills River resident, I'm sure that option could be open. Anything, any other questions, concerns, discussion? To me, it seems reasonable because all the surrounding properties are Mills River mixed use that are in the town, so it fits right in. I would have more concern if it were a different zoning.
I'd have a lot of questions if we were able to talk about annex. So I'm trying to make sure we separate those. But if the town council agrees to annex it, our role in this, I don't see how we have any argument for anything other than mixed use.
I agree.
I'd love to talk more about the annexation, but that's just not our
I
bucket
mean, I
today.
agree with Mr. Foster, but everything else around is zoned exactly the same way, so you can't, not much of a leg to stand on it.
No.
It goes, which, but that sound like that's the concern based on what you plan to do.
And again,
Because it is, I mean, it's nothing but residential homes.
But we can't ask
I
that.
understand. I'm just saying that's what's there, so,
Well, we can't make our decision based on that. How about that?
well,
and again, it is a different type of request that this board's never seen before, because again, usually with a rezoning, we're evaluating the current zoning, and uses and the proposed zoning and uses. But in this instance, because county zoning is the current zoning, that's not something we're looking into because it's a totally separate jurisdiction. So although it's a rezoning case, R2302, and we have to go through the state statutory requirements like we do for any zoning assignment to a property, it's different because we're just not making those same comparisons because of the jurisdiction difference.
Is, and it kind of, I think the question's been answered and what Brian alluded to in the beginning, and like you were just saying, since this is an unusual situation, but in that it's a question about property that becomes part of Mills River. So is there a presumption that it theoretically could be zoned anything? Or is truly the only option on the table the one, the mixed use? I guess I'm just curious, if this were located someplace else, like if it was on the border of Transylvania County, would we just be looking at, what it was zoned in Transylvania County and then, whatever's adjacent? Like, it seems that this is kind of a unique situation because of what you're saying, and I'm just not, and this is my first time considering something like this, so I'm just curious what kind of precedent there would be or what else we would have to consider other than what's presented as the request.
Yeah,
Show that other map,
I
Michael,
think that's-
before you answer that for me, please.
Which
The
map?
larger map that panned out and shows how large the mixed use currently is.
I don't have that.
How far away the next, or maybe it was your future use map you had up.
that's not, well, let me answer Ms.
Okay.
Moreno's question.
Thank
So, I'm sorry, could you repeat that? I lost you.
Sorry.
No, I got it. No, I got it. If it is in a different part of town, yeah, I mean, we take context and location into account. The difficulty with our zoning is that approximately 3/4 of the town is mixed use. So if you go to Transylvania or the southern part of our jurisdiction, I think the recommendation would be the same. And I'll just say, I mean, we consulted with Mr. Lotz as part of this process, and this was staff's recommendation because there's nothing else out there. Now, if this was, I'm trying to think. I guess the only other place where there would be a different zoning request would maybe be if we annexed, across Hooper Lane here or something like that. Not that that's a consideration, but there is general business zoning or neighborhood commercial zoning more in our area here. So I think those considerations would be on the table. But when we get to our borders, thinking, because again, it's not the town annexing, it's a voluntary contiguous annexation. So when we get to those border areas, it's all mixed use. So it's hard to choose something else. And again, staff felt this was the most appropriate, and we advised Mr. Lotz to make this part of his request.
Makes sense. Good questions.
Let me pull up just the GIS zoning map, because again, the future land use map does show the rural residential category, but that's not mixed use zoning.
While you're looking that up, this isn't this isn't an official question. Can the town unilaterally annex that, or do they need the county involved?
Well, the town, you're saying can they?
Can the
If
town?
that,
Involuntarily annex?
No,
it's very different.
No, voluntarily. Can-
Voluntarily.
Well, we're not doing anything. Let me just put that out there. The town is responding to the property owner's petition.
Okay.
So the property owner has approached the town and saying, I voluntarily am interested in coming into Mills River's jurisdiction.
Let me ask a different question.
So the
Does the
town
county
is-
have a role in that response? Do they have to let the property go to?
No, but we have communicated with the county and multiple departments of theirs.
Again, that's not.
So here's our jurisdiction. The Brown is mixed use. So again, if we're talking about annexing anywhere along this boundary, which I think we're
Right there.
about right here, the recommendation is going to be mixed use. Like I was saying, if it were an annexation case where you were off of 191 Haywood Road, yeah, other zoning districts could probably be considered. Again, it's hard at the northern end too. Now that's the county line, so we're probably never going to be able to annex anything there. But again, the recommendation would be, consistent with what's around it. Again, unless it were, I mean, some unique situation where there's an industrial operation there or something.
And this is another question, because it does confuse me. Why in the future land map would this area all be green for rural residential rather than?
So the future land use map, so there's the zoning map and the future land use map. The zoning map basically identifies the current zoning districts by property, and then through those zoning districts, the allowed uses, the land development regulations that would apply, what's allowed via zoning permit versus special use permit, et cetera. The future land use map is the map we use to consider rezoning. So again, this was put together as part of the comprehensive plan adopted in 2021, and through public input, the planning board's input and town council's input, this is what the plan says those areas of town should look like in the future, or the land uses should look like. Usually I include the use table that goes with the future land use map. I didn't in this case because rural residential is pretty straightforward. But again, every future land use category you can see in the legend down here, there's rural residential, mixed residential, industrial and employment, community center, and community crossroads. They all have a list of desirable uses, acceptable uses, and not desirable uses. So for example, if someone were to come in and want to rezone, let's say to light industrial in this area, those would be listed as a not desirable use. And so staff basically uses this as our way to make a recommendation for the zoning or not. So in that case, if it's against the comprehensive plan, not consistent with the plan or the future land use map, staff would recommend denial. Staff usually bases the recommendation on those adopted town documents.
Do we have a list of the uses in residential county zoning district?
No. I can pull one up, but again, because it's not our jurisdiction, it's difficult to consider.
It's hard to discuss that as changing zoning
It's not our zoning.
because it's not our zoning.
Exactly.
So we are in effect recommending the establishment of a zoning when it comes in,
Exactly.
if it's annexed.
If it even goes forward past this Thursday.
If, we talk rural residential or mixed use, aren't we basically saying they're the same?
No.
Don't
Rural residential is a future land use
Don't we have a
category.
rural residential classification?
No.
We
Mixed.
don't, yeah.
Mixed use.
It's all mixed use, that's right.
Well, the zoning district, the residential zoning districts are mixed use, which covers most of our jurisdiction.
And my problem with that, as I
Neighborhood
stated before,
commercial, and then the MR30 low density residential.
yeah, as I stated before, my problem with the mixed use is the possibilities that could go there. And I've said this before, and I hear it all the time talking to different people. Why is Mills River changing in this? Well, I said, they're right. It's mixed use. They can do that. And that's, I guess, going to be an ongoing problem.
So is there a zoning now that would equate to rural residential? Is there,
The
MR30.
county district,
what category? MR30?
probably, because it's very strictly single family, churches, home occupations, but basically no commercial of any kind.
And that is the goal by 2040 is that the areas in green would have that zoning.
The MR30.
Mm-hmm.
No, so let me pull
Okay.
up the land, basically the chart that shows the different districts for the future land use.
Yeah, that's what gets
The
confusing
future
to
land use
me.
doesn't change zoning. I think that's where,
It's used as a tool.
it's used as a tool
Yes.
to guide if someone wants to change it to light industrial.
How would someone, or how would we go about changing rural residential to MR30?
You mean mixed use to MR30. Rural residential
Well, I
doesn't
got-
exist.
No, I understand. Let me say it fully is, rural residential right now is mostly mixed use.
Correct, that's the
How
biggest
would-
overlap.
How would we change that to MR30?
I'm not disagreeing that that's a conversation. I said that almost word to word to
That's
Jim
fine.
earlier today, that we
Fine
need to
for
put
this.
that on the table, but not for this.
I
but
get you, but
I'm
we're on the
100% with you.
topic, I was just curious.
Yeah.
So here we go. So this is the future land use chart. So you can see for rural residential, desirable uses are parks and public space, trails and recreation, agriculture, and estate lots, or large lot residential. Acceptable uses, civic community schools, and normal single-family residential. And then, like I said, not desirable commercial, multifamily, and industrial. So when we consider rezonings in the rural residential category, we look at this chart to see if the request is consistent with our plan. Staff found this request consistent because estate residential lots and single-family residential lots are in the desirable and acceptable categories.
So a question, when the request is made, there's no requirement to inquire from the town as to how they're going to use that land?
No, because, well, we can talk about it, but again, if you rezone a property with a specific development in mind, that's contract zoning and that's illegal.
Right.
It has to, that's why I say every time, you have to consider every single use that could happen in that zoning district, not just, we don't know, Mr. Watts, something could happen, he may have to sell the property and a business might move in there, which is allowed in
My
mixed use.
point exactly.
So if a use goes in, it's allowed under mixed use, then at some point in time when it may not fit with this vision, in the future, because it would be a use not, it may have something that wouldn't be desirable or even acceptable because it's allowed under mixed use, but it wouldn't be desired at
Like
some
the
point.
commercial aspect.
Right.
Yeah.
75% of the town falls.
And
under that.
honestly, I spoke to the town manager about that. That's an inconsistency with all mixed use zoning in 3/4 of the town.
Which is what, this is outside of this conversation a little bit, but I mean, how do you go about changing the zone?
You're talking about a large scale rezoning of the town.
Yeah.
Well, after we're done with the light issue.
And greenhouses.
Bring that up after we
Yeah,
solve Jim's light issue.
I, like everybody else from Resident Mills River, I hear what Jim hears, everything else, but I don't see anybody showing up to talk about it.
Yeah.
Residents need to be involved if they wanna not have all of this green stay mixed use, which could turn into anything.
You're right.
Right.
And I mean, that, you're exactly right. And I mean, that's why some developers like developing in our mixed use district, because
Sure.
there's no setbacks for residential structures. There's just a minimum lot size. And then if there's a subdivision, you have to follow our subdivision code requirements. But it is, almost like open zoning and is very flexible. But again, that's a larger conversation.
And then we're back to the surrounding Mills River zoning is MRMU. So that's what this property lends itself to that.
If we make that recommendation for you, what you would be looking for is if in fact the town decides to accept the voluntary annexation, this is the zoning we would recommend.
Yeah, you would do a normal, if you want to recommend approval, it would just be like any other rezoning recommendation. Again, council's considering the annexations Thursday night. If they choose to even go forward in the process, then I will deliver your recommendation and they'll set a public hearing for December. If they choose not to go forward in the annexation process, unfortunately, what we've done tonight is moot. But again, state law allows you to start the process at the same time.
Any further discussion? Any questions, any concerns? Well, in that case, the chair would entertain a motion to recommend the approval of the zoning, if one, or a motion to not recommend.
Well, the question is, if they annex it or approve the annexation on Thursday and there's no zoning approved or recommended from the planning board, if we kick it
That's a good
down the
question.
road 30 days, what happens if it's approved?
Then the process would be delayed. The annexation could continue, but we would have to just revisit this at another meeting, and the zoning assignment process would basically just be kicked back a month.
What would the zoning be when it came in? What would it be zoned as? Would it be not zoned?
Nothing. So if you want to get into state statutes, county regulations are applicable for 60 days after annexations.
So it was keep the same zoning for 60 days.
60 days only. Then it reverts to our jurisdiction. But again, we're trying to get ahead of that and assign something that's consistent with the area.
Well,
And council could still make the decision to zone it with or do they need a recommendation?
No, I mean, you can still, so if you recommend for denial of the mixed use zoning, council can still hold their public hearing and could make the same decision or a different decision. If this board tables tonight, it would delay council even setting a public hearing because
Got it.
council can't set a public hearing until this board has made a
A
recommendation
recommendation.
or until you've waited more than 2 meetings, and then it would be an automatic vote, basically. Well, not a vote. It would be an automatic support of it. I believe if the planning board doesn't make a decision on a zoning map amendment or a text amendment, not on its own like the lighting ordinance, but submitted by an outside party within 60 days, it's an automatic positive referral to council.
Okay.
well, I still have a big problem with mixed use because of what possibilities are. like I said, I know Mr. Lots, I feel, I sympathize with my no ways thinking, but if something happens and it goes the other way, and you have all these residents already there, it would be an eyesore for them. That's just my thoughts.
Well, the surrounding property is already mixed use. as you said,
It's
right?
zoned that now, but most of the surrounding properties are fine. Yeah, but most of the residents around there in Mills River is residential, right? We'd like to see it stay that way.
I think that's a large question, as we talked about earlier. Unfortunately, that, I mean, if the town annexes the property, yeah, that could be anything other than mixed use, whether I like that or not at the moment. I don't think there's much to go on.
We either recommend approval or denial. We don't recommend another zoning.
No, I know
Correct.
that. Well,
No, I mean, I'm just thinking out loud. And if we did, would that open up the door for spot zoning?
Not if we
Because
leave
it
it
would be different.
mixed use, I don't believe.
Right. If we leave it mixed
Right.
use, we're fine. In my opinion, I think we're fine because it's easy to see all the surrounding town property is town limits. There is.
Arlie,
mixed
did you
use.
give us a cheat sheet on a motion? We have verbiage to read back to you anywhere in here, or do we need to make up our own words?
It would just be a recommendation
Right.
either for approval or denial, and then adopting the statement of consistency if it's a recommendation for approval.
And is that
And you can
on
do
our-
that, you can do that in one motion or two. Or you can
You have an argument to
And not-
table it?
And not making a decision until it gets in it. Since it will stay rural residential for 60 days, even if the town decides to grant permission. And even though we can't act on it tonight, there's no reason why we have to act on it.
That is correct. We
I
don't have
agree.
to.
Does the council have the ability to vote?
at a later point. So
After a
Thursday night, maybe you should go into this. Thursday night, there's two parts of it. There's the land development regulation assignment, which is what we're considering. And then the other part of the process is handled by the town clerk, where basically, again, we look at statutory law, and there's a number of legal steps the town has to go through to determine if the request is sufficient. I believe our lawyers, looked into the property, into the request, and so if town council moves forward with that Thursday night, the process will move forward, and they could still vote to not annex it. But the zoning will only come after the annexation is acted on. So the staff's idea in scheduling this is that the planning board would consider this. Council would either begin the annexation process or not this Thursday. If they did start it, the public hearings would take place at the one meeting in December, I think December 14th. So there would be the annexation public hearing for the first contiguous property, the one that's in red on the screen. Then there would be the annexation public hearing for the next property, this one. And then there would be a public hearing to assign zoning. If this board doesn't act, I'm just saying it would just, there's no harm. It would just push that other public hearing back. We were just trying to tie it all up in one.
To me, if I were the town council and you didn't act on this, I would ask you, what more information did you need to act? Why didn't you do this the first time? Because it just seems that obvious to me. I know we're all just pushing back for the sake of making sure we're thinking of a question, but is there something specific?
No, other than it will be new if they
Right.
don't annex it and, but I do agree, I agree that if it is going to be annexed,
So the attachment I, is that right, Michael? Is the statement of consistency, is that an I or a Roman numeral?
It's,
The last one, thank you. The front of the last page.
yeah, there's
Statement of consistency.
a paragraph in there that looks pretty good.
Under recommendations.
So if someone were maybe wanting to make a motion or not. Well, my opinion, for what it's worth, I think it's reasonable. All the land surrounding it is Mills River mixed use. I agree there are other uses that could go in there that wouldn't fit the context of the residential. However, on a small piece of property, what would really work there besides residential? There's not going to be if you read some of these, they
There could be another brewery, there could be lots of things on 5 acres.
yeah, and we could probably hear that one
Yeah,
too.
we need another storage unit, we need another
Um,
brewery, I mean, there's lots of,
But
that could be said for
Most of the town.
Yep.
that's pretty far off the beaten path for
I wouldn't make a decision based on
certain
that.
uses. Yeah. So, were the request that it be zoned MR30, maybe we would all have a little less heartburn. However, it would be 2 parcels of MR30 surrounded by, even though that might seem to lend itself towards the future vision a little better, but the request is for Mills River mixed use. So to me, it's reasonable. I would be in favor.
I would try to ask this. It's a density question, actually, so MR30.
It's all the same.
Nothing can be under point, yeah.
Town, yeah, so the town has a town-wide residential density requirement, so it actually,
Whether it's mixed use or MR30.
yeah, it doesn't matter which zoning district you're in, it's one dwelling unit
Except for
per,
commercial.
per 30,000 square feet.
Would you entertain a motion?
I would
I'll make
entertain
a
a
motion that, Orly, please correct me, that, approve the request and that we find it, both here, find it to be consistent with the town's, Making Mills River, 2040 comprehensive plan. Orly, do you need anything else? I'm sorry.
Sounds good.
Yeah, I'm sorry, referencing that and adopt that statement of consistency that I just referenced.
Okay. And is there a second?
I'll second.
All right. Any more discussion before we vote? We have it on the table. So in that case, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. And those opposed?
Aye.
Okay. So there's we need to do a motion.
That was 4-3 fail.
Yeah, 4-3 against, 3-4 in favor. Okay, do we need a motion to deny, or it just fails? So it fails. We don't need a motion to deny.
Lisa was a no.
So the board would have to take one of the actions listed on the staff report. So either table till the
Mhm.
next meeting or recommend denial. Those are the only two.
Would we have a motion to table or a motion to deny?
I'll make the motion.
Okay.
No, second.
Okay. We have a motion to table. All in favor?
Do we have discussion before that vote?
We can certainly have discussion.
I'm open to anything, but I'm not sure what we're gaining for the tabling it.
Okay, my question is, because we can only focus on zone.
Yeah.
And I get that all of it around there, all of the zoning is mixed use. So when we're adding something new to the county, and it sounds like, I guess you can't ask that question, the purpose is, would still be met with MR 30, is that right? Numbers, MR 30. If the use could still be met with MR 30, entertain that. But I don't know all the details of what the other uses of MR 30 are, so.
It's only
That's why
residential,
I want
right?
to know more about that, just why we table it, not deny it. I don't think we want to deny it at all.
So if the request were to come back for MR30, then how would that work?
The annexation petition has been filed with the request for mixed use, and the board cannot impose a different
Oh,
zoning.
we wouldn't impose
Well, I'm-
anything unless
No,
it
I'm
were a
just saying,
request.
so the annexation petition, you know,
Could they come back and request MO 30?
I'll have to look into that. I don't know the answer. I mean, all I can say is the petition for annexation's been filed and the request is for mixed use, and that's what's before this board. But again, I'll have to look into that.
So we have a motion to table. All those in favor of tabling and all those opposed?
Nay.
Nay. So now we're 5-2
The table.
to table, in favor of table. Okay. That sounds, thank everyone for that. Even though we disagree, we don't vehemently disagree. That's why there's 7 of us, and we can have 7 different opinions.
We discussed it.
We discussed it, and so that's how it works. Old business, the lighting ordinance. If there are any changes or anything we want to talk about, then now would be a time if we want to wait until next meeting to discuss that any further, or Mr. Malachek?
Yeah, so I'll just
Eh.
highlight some of the changes we made. Excuse me, I'm just going to scroll through it here.
Sure.
So as I said last time, I added a number of definitions, including some of the pictograms, I guess you could call them, of the different fixture types. So again, when we reference those in the code, those standards are defined. So that's the largest addition, I think, in the first section of the lighting standards. You can see in applicability, I did add here line 122, prohibited lighting is applicable townwide for all properties and all uses. And one of the items we removed too was I think the old item 2 under section G about non-conforming lighting. There was a section that talked about if the site expanded by 50%, that would have to come into compliance, and so we deleted that item and left the other 2 in. And then again, in prohibited lighting, just reiterated that that's effective or applicable to all properties and all land uses in the town. And then really the only other major addition was the subdivision code, which again, there's a lot of pages here, but it was really just adding a couple references in. So again, that minor subdivisions, again, including the construction of roadways with road lighting, shall adhere to the lighting standards. Same thing for major subdivisions, if I can find it. So again, even adding something in our road standard chart for major subdivisions, that again, if roads include roadway lighting, they have to comply. And then here's the other section. So there's a section basically in the subdivision code for additional provisions or requirements. And so I added one for subdivision lighting standards. And again, it's just referencing back to this new draft ordinance. So when we have a subdivision developer come in, there's no confusion. They're alerted that this is going to be a new requirement for subdivision development. But those are really only the only major changes. I did not include a consistency statement tonight, just because it sounded like the board had more discussion, and that's really all I have for you.
Okay, thank you. I've had some suggestions made that we go ahead and restate in here, even though it's redundant, that this doesn't apply to agricultural uses. I did like the part where the prohibited types of lights, to include lasers, searchlights, etc., apply to all uses, and that would include agriculture, if I understand that correctly.
No,
So even, okay,
because we have that provision at the very beginning of our zoning code that says agriculture is exempt from all zoning.
even lasers and searchlights.
You'd have to change the agricultural exemption
Okay.
to be applicable to that one section.
Well, then I misread that. Okay.
New items in just a minute.
all
We're got a
all
suggestion
uses with
for
an asterisk.
I think with the laser thing, if that became a play, the FAA would be.
Yeah. Yeah.
You and I know that.
Yes. They're liable to call in an airstrike on you. That's right. That you could get in a lot of trouble.
Uh, let me comment on this. I know we discussed this, but we are line 181. When repairing or replacing 50% or more of total light fixtures, I just somehow feel that if it needs replacing, it should be replaced with the newer type that we're talking about throughout this document. I mean, let's throw it out there for any other thoughts or considerations.
Does that requirement trigger all the lights on the property? If you're doing more than 50%, you got to do them all, or you can do up to 50%. Yeah, I see what you're saying, Mr. Foster. That's
Well, then maybe there should be a trigger point, but I just don't think that we got to need to get to 50% to trigger the replacement with the new type lights.
So this even goes to the non-conformity section of our code. So basically the 50% mark is the standard threshold that, and in this place, if you're repairing or replacing 50% or more, all of them have to be in
what
compliance.
Mike was saying in the prior
But-
paragraph, it says full compliance.
But it does say also, however, any replacement of a wall pack light, which are the ones that just shoot straight out,
Yeah.
or a floodlight at any time shall be required to be compliant. So if you those are the worst fixtures, the worst offenders for glare and light trespass. So again, we would have to promote this so there's awareness in the town, but the idea is, because again, staff's never going to know if someone's changing out one wall pack light, but the idea is to create awareness, and that if someone does change out one, it would have to be a compliant shielded fixture. But really the provision is more about getting non-conforming lighting on sites expanding in compliance with the 50% provision.
Well, something else, just clarify for me. On line 104, 105, 106, what we're talking about here with this temporary outdoor lighting.
That's just the definition of what that is.
I mean, if I'm having a,
So the specific illumination of an outdoor area, it probably should say, or an object, by any man-made device located outdoors that produces light by any means for a period of less than 7 days. That's temporary lighting, with at least 180 days passing before another 7-day period.
so you couldn't have like a say if I wanted to have certain events on my property,
yeah, that's what,
and I set up temporary lighting, and then 2 weeks later we have another one, so I set up temporary lighting. That's not temporary anymore.
that's what I'm saying. If it's, like I said, I have a big parking lot and I want to bring in a big concert and I'll put up this big stage and all these lights, You know, it's shining everywhere. Is that what we call temporary lighting? Yes.
In this case, yes. So that would be allowed
But
for 7 days,
it
but
would
that
be
would,
allowed, but that don't come back next week and do it again.
correct.
Okay.
180 days.
Well, okay.
6 months,
You can do it for 7 days.
twice a year.
Then you have to wait 180 days. Right. Okay. Just want to clarify that.
Questions? Comments? Do we want to think about this some more? I think it's looking good. It's
Yeah.
looking better every time. I'm not sure.
It seems pretty consistent with all communities around us.
Yes, sir.
And, you know, our progress, we hope to try, by trying to perfect it, because it can be amended in the future, correct?
So,
The two main questions I heard last time that were outstanding, which is again why I didn't include a consistency statement tonight, because it sounded like there needed to be more discussion, was I believe Mr. Cole brought up, you know, are we going for a true dark sky lighting ordinance, or are we just trying to control commercial and residential subdivision lights? That was one question I heard. And then Mr. Foster brought up single family home applicability. You know, are we going to be in the business of, I guess it's twofold. If new homes are built, what does the lighting on those houses look like? And then the second part of that would be, if an existing home has a light fixture, you know, possibly shining into a neighbor's yard, is the town going to be involved in enforcing anything? Those are two pretty big questions. So you know, we don't have to discuss it tonight, but that's why I didn't include a consistency statement, because I felt those still.
And I
need to
still
be
have those
discussed.
questions.
usually with residential, it's the porch lighting,
Yeah, I know.
outside
Could
lighting.
be anything.
Yeah. Okay, well, do we want to discuss, or we want to talk about it some more?
Last time, I mean, we're not trying, you don't have the word dark sky initiative, which is a whole position. This is just an worded comment. I'm thinking on the word that matters. So I have no problems with that. I mean, I don't, that's what we're trying to do, is just preserve as much dark sky as possible, not follow.
Yeah.
Right.
So I'm good with how it's all written.
Again, it's sort of a darker sky.
Well, I mean, that's
We're
a
getting
specific
there.
thing.
Dark skies. Yes, sir.
Yeah, have a basic control lighting.
I think you gotta move forward at some point and adopt it. You can always amend it.
Does that sound like a motion?
I mean, I don't know if can we do that?
Would
Sure.
would we be ready to make a motion? Would staff be?
We don't have a statement of consistency.
We don't have a
to
statement of
reference.
consistency, sorry, because I thought there was a lot more discussion that.
Well,
Okay.
Yeah, and I
Um,
read and thought about it, looked at all that, and looked at this wording, and my issue is satisfied, so.
I know in the past meeting, we were tabling or side, the idea of the greenhouses.
Right.
And if I understand it, if we leave it as is, greenhouses will fall under the agricultural exemption. And therefore, basically, this is not addressing their light fixture.
Correct. And what, I didn't mention that, one of the comments, I can't remember if it was the last meeting or the one before, was to strike that out. Because in my first draft, I included it just as sparking conversation and, you know, thought. But you're right, they would be completely exempt. There would be no light controls or standards for any agricultural use or property.
Would we want to talk about their lights other than their plant growth related lights? Or outdoor lighting for their dumpsters out back that shines in my bedroom? Oh, I mean, or something,
Something
No,
like
you're
that.
right.
like that.
You're right. I mean, some of them are commercial facilities, and they probably
They have
also
parking lots, they
have
have
wall pack.
awnings, they have dumpsters. They
Yeah, have wall
driveways,
pack
loading
lights
docks.
that are those same lights that project straight outward.
Sorry?
But yeah, per our zoning code, they're exempt.
There's really no way for us to say lighting necessary for agricultural uses is exempt, but
If we touch that, I think it has to be completely
Yeah.
separate, doesn't it? Because right now it's just kind of, because Bert asked us to restate it the other day when you and I were talking to him, and I felt like it was not needed because it is just, it's complete exemption.
it's pretty
It's
clear.
not a partial exemption.
No, it's
I mean,
clear.
we could
Yeah,
certainly
I don't. I think
add
it
a
would have to be
statement to
addressed
say
that way as
agriculture.
opposed to in here.
So one way of tackling it from that angle would be including something in our ordinance or the lighting draft ordinance that would say,
Does not apply.
exterior lighting for agricultural facilities. I mean, you could even single out wall pack and floodlights,
Right.
wall pack and floodlights that are external to a facility for site lighting on an agricultural property must comply with the fixture standards only.
Loading
But-
dock, parking lots, all of that.
To
but-
include lasers and floodlights and searchlights and
But you would still have to
Mountain
change
green.
the agricultural exemption that supersedes everything. So you can still put that in here, but it will just not be applicable until the agricultural exemption is changed. And again, just like I did for the subdivision code, the agricultural exemption, if that's changed, would basically say all agricultural uses are exempt except for this one provision. But it would be a different amendment.
and we
could have that like as a placeholder, essentially.
If the board wants to see it, it could be put in. It's just not applicable until the townwide agricultural exemption is changed.
So could we maybe look at that language at the next meeting since we're not making any motions tonight? Because I personally feel other than the directly growth-related lighting, they should be in this conversation. I don't think you get into the interior lighting.
To get into that, I was just making sure, I just wanted to clarify. And I like this point about kind of the lighting unrelated to the
the
agricultural
use. Mhm.
seems to be something that would be useful to cover.
I get credit for that, Jim, in your notes.
Is there consensus on that change?
I think that sounds reasonable. I think we would certainly love to have input from any people who'd be directly affected by that. How would that affect their operations, if at all?
But it would still fall under if that was adopted.
50%.
Right,
Right.
until they
It's
change
still-
50% of it.
Correct.
They have to go out and change it right.
New
That's
construction
correct.
would be held to it and 50% improvements would be triggered.
That's correct.
Full
It
compliance.
would be new.
But we're only talking about external.
Right.
Correct.
External.
Non-growth related or whatever. We'll
Parking
call it
lot,
or Jim. or James.
external. Yeah,
I know what that language is, but.
parking lot lighting, things like that, dumpster lighting, whatever.
They have bay doors and loading docks and parking lots and approaches, all sorts of stuff.
So, yeah, so even then it wouldn't be triggered until they replace 50%,
Of that.
except
So-
maybe for wall
of-
packs. We might want to say specifically wall packs.
So now I'm hearing two things. So do we want to include agricultural exterior non-growing lights in the non-conformity section as well? Like you're referencing if 50% changes, everything has to change. Do you want that, or are we just talking about if a wall pack's replaced, it's replaced with something shielded?
Maybe both.
I think you put too many moving parts in that, it's gonna get a lot of push.
And again, this is I know everyone knows this would be a draft ordinance passed on to council, so council could always make their own changes as well.
And
Well, if any business has put it back to life, agriculture or not, would we want that ultimately?
we would want ultimately, and it would be lights that are, it wouldn't affect the growing business. And we keep saying that it wouldn't affect, and it wouldn't be imposed on people now. And when those lights are replaced, they're probably going to be replaced with conforming lights anyway, because that's what you get from Duke Energy. So it shouldn't be much of a hardship, but that's where we need the input. That's where we need people
Maybe
that,
we get Bert to come down.
yeah, stakeholders.
But just to clarify, one of our site lighting standards is the 1 foot candle maximum at a property line. That would not be applicable because that would take into light trespass, possibly from grow lights as well.
Correct.
Okay,
So
so
it
we're-
wouldn't apply because those lights are necessary for the agricultural
So we don't
operation.
like going out trying to figure out which lights are trespass.
So just to be clear, because I'm going to point to a specific section, it's really this section G right here. Existing non-conforming lighting.
You're talking about the exterior lighting being consistent with all structures, right?
Yes, sir. I don't know. I'm starting to have second thoughts about item G. Because I don't know how necessary it's going to be. I think I do like the wall packs, but the area lighting, like I said, when those are replaced, they're probably going to be replaced with fixtures that meet our standards anyway.
I guess one option I could do is I could pull out this language. The wall, anytime a wall pack or floodlight is replaced, it has to be compliant. So I could pull that out from this section and just make a number 3 that just addresses those fixture types. And then we could point, again, if the board wanted to, agricultural applicability to that section only.
Is that like universally known as the number one offender here?
Wall packs,
That's
yes.
why we keep, okay.
Because they're just a box and it just shoots straight out with no shielding or directional.
Okay.
And then the floodlights that are mounted up on poles that shine at the buildings, but they shine everywhere. So those would be, because most street lights and area lights now are all cut off, if not full cut off. They're mostly cut off.
So we're saying those lights that shoot straight out only have to become compliant at 50% of the lighting.
What I was suggesting is this highlighted section specifically for replacement of any wall pack or floodlight fixture. That replacement, even if it's just one fixture,
Okay,
has
so
to be
it's on
has to be with a compliant, and I would basically pull that out and just
Right.
make it number
Yeah,
3.
Yeah.
that's what I was talking about before. Yeah.
And if you want agricultural to be applicable to that, then I would basically load that in there as well. I'm just trying to, again, if the board wants to adopt something in the next meeting, I'm just trying to be as specific as possible so I can present you something.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So that one provision would be applicable to any use, including the lighting not necessary for agriculture.
Growing.
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 You could argue that the
Growing.
loading docks are necessary for agriculture, parking's necessary for agriculture. Growing light, whatever they call it.
But that's only, and that's only when it needs to be replaced. We're not telling people you got to go out, change out all your parking lot lights, or you got to change your wall packs. When they're replaced, they're replaced. Something that meets the requirement.
Lights on this property compliant? Because the lights on the sign shoot up, so
The town.
we voluntarily put lights on the top, do that now.
That's getting
What
mowed
I've
down anyway.
what I've seen our parking lot lighting is compliant. It's either cut off or full cut off, and I believe that was changed out a number of years ago.
Yeah.
Our sign lighting probably could be shielded, but when the road widening project comes through, that's going to be demolished anyway. And then our flagpole lighting is probably the worst offender, but it's exempt
It's exempt.
because it's flag finished. So we're in pretty good shape here.
Yeah.
I like,
Okay, so we'll talk some more next meeting.
we done with old business?
Yeah,
I believe that is old business.
that's it.
And are there additional items or board comments?
Definitely for me, I know we've gone long, but that whole annexing thing was killing me. Jim and I were on the phone with each other 20 seconds after that email was sent. And I hope the public comments on that, stop that. Because it's all but this surrounded by Henderson County residents, not Mills River residents. It's frustrating me. I just want you guys to know that that's how I feel about it. I feel like it needs to be MRMU if it's going to be annexed. I wish we had say in the annexing, and we do as public. I mean, I guess we can come on Thursday and say something, but I felt like there was a lot of conversation had there that we just couldn't
Yeah, my
have.
question has to do with acres, quite honestly. I'd like to know what we can and can't do. I didn't know that. We're just voting on that request, not offering something different. I didn't know.
Well, I'm bringing it up because Mike said, even though it sounded like we were disagreeing, we're over here actually agreeing that I would love to see a massive review of MRMU and that divided.
What's the first step in the process?
Us, just putting it out there, and the town council can poo on it if they want to, right?
You
So
mean us here in
this
the
board, these seven people.
we could bring as an item to the agenda.
Jim brought the lighting item, right? Just like that.
Right,
I'm gonna tell you, it's way more expensive than you might think.
to rezone.
It would just be, it's a massive undertaking. It is not something small. I just feel maybe it'd be worth, and that's why I'm bringing it up here in my notes.
Yeah, and I just don't know anything about what that cost is really. I'd like to learn all of those things.
It seems very consistent though with what the town is doing with the land committee and the
Wha-
farmland preservation in that
Right.
if we continue to have, 75% of the town being zoned mixed use, and yet we're also saying that it's a priority for us to preserve farmland and open spaces.
They're not
And the
gonna-
future map loose,
And the
future
map
use
is
map is
consistent.
residential, rural residential.
That's been confounding me for a long time, and I didn't, if that's what our residents have, that was sort of the feedback of the residents, that we keep all of that
Right.
clean, and yet our residents.
Michael, do you care to give any history on, this is a very young town. This is really young.
I understand, and I'm the newest member here, so I don't know what I don't know because I haven't been here, and I don't know what I don't know because I just don't know.
Not much newer than I am. So
Well, and I've only been here 2.5 years, so I mean, I've just been told what I think is the history too, and the only thing I've heard is that when the town incorporated, it was still a pretty split decision. There's some people who still don't think there should be a town of Mills River, and sometimes we get on the phone with those folks. But the Mills River Mixed Use District, from what I understand, secondhand, is that it's very loose on regulations out of respect for private property rights, and specifically in the more rural, agricultural country sections of town, whatever you want to call it. That's why there are not setbacks for residential structures, but you're correct. That means a developer like Big Hills Construction with Mills River Crossing can come in and can put the houses 5 feet off the property line if they want to. So again, having it be a loose zoning district with few restrictions can hurt the town because there are developers that can take advantage of that, but it also preserves private property rights for those current owners. So it's a difficult discussion.
Lisa, do you agree with this, that you feel there's conflict between that zoning and the future map use and the land preservation conversations?
100%.
Okay, so that's how I feel too. And that's why I feel like it may be expensive in the end, but I think we at least owe the conversation. So I feel,
Absolutely. I mean, it again, given the budget that is already set aside for this land conservation, I don't know how we could say that that's more important than this conversation about the zoning, mixed-use zoning not being consistent with our future. And maybe it made sense when the town was formed. I understand that it was.
well, retaining property rights was the objective there.
Right.
They didn't want to be, so R2, that property that's residential only. That's it.
Right.
In Henderson County zoning, in Mills River mixed use, it's wide open.
I don't know this, so I'm asking the question, but all of the things that can take place, if you will, in mixed use or MR30, whatever that list is, how or can that be adjusted within that category?
Yes, it's a simple text amendment to the mixed-use zoning district description.
Can you ask that question again for me?
Well, so you have mixed use and there are all the list of uses here, right?
Okay.
And then I don't know what MR30, I don't know what the uses are. My point is, from what I gather, I'm not speaking for anybody else, the mixed use versus what it is in Henderson County allowed one more home to be built on that property. My point, that doesn't concern me, the homes built on the property. What concerns me, and Jim's point, is all the other things that are listed in that.
Right.
So can we not tear that down? And there are different ways to attack this, I guess I'm saying. And so,
That was the frustration, and the reason I differed with you guys, I don't feel that application didn't give us the flexibility to talk about
and I admit
MR30.
that, but I agree with that.
That's what's frustrating.
Because if he'd come in and asked for R30, yeah, MR30, then
Which is strictly residential. Right.
while it would have been different zoning than surrounding Mills River zoning,
Trigger.
it would be
spot zone.
consistent with surrounding county zoning.
Right. And what triggered, who pulled the trigger on that?
Somebody's got
The
to,
law does.
Something different?
somebody's got to
The law
accuse us.
does. That's not a person, that's not an
I
opinion.
didn't know
There's-
if it was
But
petitioned by somebody or.
if,
No, no,
if I read that properly, part of it is capricious. And I'm not sure I know what that word means, but I think if we all decide we don't like someone, so we change their zoning and we do it out of
targeting
spite.
people. It's just-
So if someone asks for it, then that may or may not be, that may not be spot zoning. But
I think what you're saying is more MR30 and try to get away from mixed use.
Yeah,
Yeah,
we're saying,
Or adjust what's
or
listed.
adjust
Right.
what's available in mixed
I mean,
use.
to me, I'd spend my time digging into that all the time. I mean, my understanding when I was here before it was incorporated, we incorporated to maintain the rural nature of Mill River.
Mm-hmm.
Drive down 280, I don't kind of get that feeling anymore, but you get out and, for lack of a better description, the green areas, we want to maintain that,
What's the zoning with that storage unit down on 280, Michael? Is that neighborhood or Crossroads or the new one going up? Is that mixed use?
Towards the Transylvania County
Yes.
line, that's
it's
mixed use.
mixed use.
Mixed use. So that's an example of something that, and there's a huge shortage of those in this county, believe it or not. There's people trying to- storage units.
There's a shortage?
There's a massive shortage.
second only to brewery.
Yeah, that's
Are you being
facetious there. I'm being honest. I am being absolutely serious.
Where we have too much junk.
We don't, yes, that, the cause and effect isn't my conversation.
You're building,
There's a
oh
massive
yeah,
demand.
you're
Go-
building all these apartment houses. They
There's a
have no
waiting
place to
list
put
on
the
those
stuff.
things.
So the question becomes, if we look at this, what we've got up right now, and scroll, Michael, if you would scroll down a little bit to the list.
That's
I
the
know
one
I've got it
There,
here.
there really isn't a list because it just says here, allow all uses excluding hazardous waste disposal facilities and radioactive waste disposal facilities and adult establishments.
That's the list. That's the one.
That's the list, basically. Then we have
Sounds like-
definitions that are just applicable to mixed use. And then the continuation of the list is, what's allowed via special use permits.
So I read that list. That's the list I was looking for.
Yeah.
The one we laughed about with the adult,
So there are a few more high impact uses that can be approved with development standards, but no, this is the special use permit list. So if you're doing an incinerator, waste management, mining, concrete, asphalt, junkyard, motorsports, slaughtering, amusement park, chip mill, heavy industry, which includes heavy industry is defined as having hazardous or explosive chemicals, and then tiny home parks. And then obviously multifamily, although it's not listed here, is another one.
and these are special use.
Those are special use. Those,
Yeah,
that's
they
the list.
require- And I don't know what special development standards or major special use permits are, but they are allowed under those circumstances.
Yeah. But you're right, it's different. In MR30 or neighborhood commercial, you have a list of permitted uses specifically. There is no list here. It just says allow all
It's
uses.
too low.
Right.
It's just what disallowed. You would end up with, instead of that huge blob we have right now of mixed use zoning, you would have back and forth between mixed use and MR30. Because you would find, I don't know, 100 properties in an area that are all residential and want to protect themselves and have all their neighborhood empty hayfields be protected as residential. That would be, but then you would have some existing, whatever, storage units and some other things along 280.
Right.
That would need to stay mixed use. But I think there's room to expand the MR30 and decrease the mixed use. And that was the proposition.
My
Because I
point-
think it addresses just a natural conflict. There's just a huge conflict there.
And it just seems inconsistent with what the town has received. Maybe it was very few people that responded to the survey, but
It always is.
but it seems inconsistent with what people have at least openly expressed. And from what I hear from other members of the board, what they hear from
Mhm.
town chatter is everyone wants to preserve Mills River, and yet we seem to have ordinances that are.
A lot of things can go in by right that don't preserve
Yeah,
rural
that's
because of the
Conflict
MR30.
right now, they just naturally are.
So if to do this, it's almost, it's a policy decision. It's the town council. It's,
It's the.
you're taking someone's land that they have all these available uses, and now you're restricting that. So,
I need to do more research on that because a town initiated down zoning is illegal.
Say that again?
A town initiated
Down zone.
down zoning.
because that would be a
Stricter
down
Another
than
zone.
person's
current.
property
Mm-hmm.
is not permitted. So I'm just saying, I don't know the answer, and what I'd recommend if the board wants to continue is that we can put this as a discussion item for the next meeting, and let me do a little more research on this.
Let's do that if you don't mind.
Yeah.
One other thing just to look at now that you've brought that up is what is legally allowable to change the list of what's allowable within the existing zone.
That's open, so,
Okay.
that's a text amendment of our
Mhm.
land use regulations, so you can go into mixed use.
That can be
and
downsized?
Yeah, and rewrite basically what the zoning district
Could
is
accomplish that same goal.
through a text amendment.
Right,
Yes,
okay.
that's correct.
that's what we need to do, yeah.
And then there could conceivably be non-conforming
There already would be,
properties
yeah.
that are out there
be a
when
ton.
we do that. And then people that always wanted one of those things and just hadn't built it yet would no longer be able to build it because their zoning,
Their zoning
Mixed
wasn't
use would not.
changed, the regulations changed.
and that's not allowable anymore. So,
Well, you can change, again, you can change the regulations for the zoning
Right.
district, the town can. But you can't specifically, and again, let me research
Let's-
this more, you can't specifically down zone
Mhm.
someone's property and limit their development rights as a town initiated action without their approval.
so if I've always wanted to have a cat sweater factory where my skilled technicians make sweaters for cats,
Now there's two of them.
and then that's not prohibited, but 6 members of the board say we can't have those. So now it's prohibited in mixed use, then that takes that use away from me. I have to go somewhere else to knit sweaters
It's a regulation
for
change.
cats.
Yeah.
That's what it is. Could be. I'm just thinking, are there things that are now allowed, wouldn't be allowed, that someone wanted to do but can't? Are we taking that from?
Right.
Very likely.
The feedback that I get personally, in a lot of, whether it was the bike path or anything
Mhm.
else, there's always that tagline to preserve the rural nature of Mills River. And if that's part of the tagline of Mills River, then we need to make an effort to do so. In my
Exactly.
Well,
So I
the
do think
Making
we
Mills
should
River future use map is an adopted guideline and has that overlay, the MRMU and the rural residential overlay 80-90%, right?
So then the goal
That's
would be,
natural conflict
in
in
the
everything I just
discussion-
said, though. That it contradicts itself.
Yeah, from,
the discussion then is to make mixed use closer
I'd like
to
to hear
the
if Michael
vision.
finds a way to,
Maintain the rural nature, excuse me,
Mhm.
of
No,
the
no.
community, and what's the best way to do that? That's the discussion. That is.
I think that's a good
going round
discussion.
circles now, but to be fair to the things that you're addressing, so.
I think that's well.
That's worth the effort.
I
If
think
I
so.
work 6 months and the town council votes it down, so what? I feel good about trying to do what I felt, the feedback that I hear from folks.
We have the discussion and we discuss if there are options to do that,
Right.
to get where we want.
Yeah.
Because the map's been approved. It's been accepted by the residents, the future vision. Okay,
That's my additional item. Thank you.
excellent. All right, staff update.
Very brief. If anyone hasn't followed other actions going on, just wanted to inform everyone the Board of Adjustment approved the special use permit for the shopping center at their October 10th meeting. The next step in the process would be for the applicant to submit zoning permit and fully engineered plans for construction. But again, the Board of Adjustment approved that use for a shopping center with grocery store, pharmacy drive-through, and drive-through restaurants.
Michael, can I ask a question? I was just there as a resident at that meeting, mostly, even though we were back up over there, I guess technically. What was, I wanted to interrupt and say, what are we waiting on for the DOT to do for that? Wasn't there something?
There's a traffic study.
Okay.
Oh, careful. Careful talking about traffic studies. Somebody might go long-winded on you.
No, okay, you,
Basically, and that's a discussion.
didn't stop him in time.
When you did it, you lit the match. So when someone turns in a traffic study, when the town requires a traffic study, NCDOT gets jurisdiction over that study. So they have to approve it. So the TIA that was submitted to the Board of Adjustment, to town, which then came to the Board of Adjustments, was not sealed and it was not approved by DOT.
Okay, that's what I understand
However,
how that got that far.
the Board of
without a
Adjustments
TI. Yeah.
does not have the ability to get very technical on that. We could ask for certain things, but my experience with boards of adjustments, pretty much the DOT has jurisdiction over that, unless we have an expert who can say, well, it really needs to have a traffic signal here. We have to have an expert say that, and because the Board of Adjustments only can make their decision on evidence. It has to meet certain standards to become evidence, professional testimony, etc. And since we didn't have anyone to say that TIA doesn't meet the standards, because it hasn't gone forward to be judged by the DOT yet, or we didn't have an expert to say, I've looked at this and it's inconsistent, blah, blah, blah. So anyway, we had to accept it. And DOT has jurisdiction over that. Now, when the DOT grants a driveway permit, that TIA will have been reviewed by congestion management or the district, but it will be reviewed by DOT and they will determine if the recommendations are.
So how far is that from breaking ground?
I don't have a permit yet.
Yeah, I was gonna say, so I'm just surprised that we're not even to the permitting.
Yeah, and if the study is sealed, the town should get a copy of the sealed document once the state gets it.
I just get asked that a lot from people.
And then they
around
have
town, ask if there's a
they have
permit. I don't
60 days usually. It's 20 business days to determine if it's correct. I mean, if it's complete, and then 20 business days to determine if it's correct. So usually it takes about 2 months.
The the formal TIA has been submitted and is being reviewed.
The
So
one
it's
that
been
that was
sealed.
with the special use
The one,
hearing.
no, the new one,
The new one.
because
Oh, okay.
yeah.
Okay. That's a
I mean,
quicker.
nothing really changed.
Right.
There's, again, DOT has very intricate, very detailed guidelines, even getting into traffic simulation requirements,
Wow.
beyond me.
Okay.
But
Thanks for.
basically there were a couple deficiencies with it that were very minor. Corrections were made, and that both the town and DOT have a complete copy now.
The
And it's sealed.
locations of the roads didn't change, or the
No.
ingress, egress?
No.
Okay.
No.
And
Going
it is
forward,
sealed correctly. I'm
yes.
correct, sealed.
Going forward, again, the town is waiting on a zoning permit, so I don't have plans yet. And again, the town has to sign off on any driveway permit. So DOT can't just issue a new driveway connection without the town's approval also on it. So basically, the town and DOT will be doing a full in-depth review of the TIA separately, but also in concert together. And anything the town demands, will be held to the driveway permit as well. That's kind of our leverage, if you want to call it that.
And this is like behind the new party.
No, so
no.
behind the Party Surgery Center, that's the backside of the townhome development. This is north and behind the
Circle K.
Bojangles,
Bojangles.
Circle K, and going up that hill.
It'll be interesting.
There's a doctor's office back up there.
All right.
So that was one development, and then I just wanted to highlight, 2 days after that, on October 12th, council did approve, in a public hearing, the bicycle and pedestrian plan. So just want to thank everyone for your time, looking at that. It's approved and it's formal town policy now. That's all I got.
Thank you. Thank you to the town staff. We are blessed to have amazing town staff. So thank you for everything you do. All right. The chair would entertain a motion for adjournment. If you,
Veterans who are in the room, sometimes they can't break. Pretty certain.
well,
No.
thank you, Brian. Glad you Marines are on our side. Oh, I didn't do much, but I did have the honor and the privilege to go with a group of veterans to Washington, D.C. as part of the honor flight. And that's something I highly recommend if there are any veterans out there that would like to participate and be honored. It's a wonderful thing. And if anyone would like to volunteer to be an escort, it's life-changing. It's
You don't know that Traveling Vietnam War Memorial
yeah,
wall
and
is
I was blessed to go with two
awesome.
Vietnam War veterans. We went to the wall. We looked at some names.
The portable one, or the whatever they call it, is going to be
It's-
here in town next week, or this weekend. I'm sorry.
So
Healing Farm out in 64. They're setting it up. I mean, you got the Veterans Day set up
cool.
everywhere. It could have gone in the whole country. It's coming here. I mean, I think it's 50% scale. I think
Wow.
200.
Well, it's a very moving memorial. It really is. So thank you so much. And if anyone wants to make a motion.
I make a motion with adjourn.
I think that was.
I think we have a motion and a second. Okay, all in favor? Yeah, don't ask any traffic study questions.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Jim was the first and
Oh.